everybody can start making their way to their seats. If you haven't filled out a blue speaker card, I would like to, and you would like to speak about any item on the agenda, other than items listed under public hearing, which has its own opportunity for you to speak, you can go fill those out now. You'll have 3 minutes to make your comment. If you can fill out a yellow card to speak on any item that concerns you that's not on the agenda. You can fill out more than one card for different subjects. You'll have plenty of opportunity to speak to this council. You'll have 3 minutes to speak on each issue. So if you want to talk on short-term rentals, you can fill out a card. If you want to talk on any other issue that's affecting you or your neighborhood, fill out a yellow card, and you can come up here 3 or 4 times if you have that much or that many different subjects to talk on. The intent of the changes that we made with council approval was to increase your access to speak to this council on issues on and off the agenda, on multiple issues that concern you as a citizen. We moved this access to speak at the beginning of the meeting to provide everyone a chance to share their concerns, even if they cannot stay for the entire meeting. It also lets the council know your thoughts and positions on issues prior to any motions, discussions, and votes that as we move through the agenda. I kindly remind speakers to give their name and addresses when they speak. Address the council and the chair as a whole. Do not address by name or by pointing members of the council when making your comments. If your time has come to an end, I'll politely ask you to wrap up your thoughts in 10 or 15 seconds. I kindly want to remind our council members that this is the public's opportunity to speak and encourage you to take notes and listen. This is not a time for debate or bantering with the public speakers. I will, however, as chair, when recognized, allow any or all council members to ask any question for clarification from the speaker after the speaker's 3 minutes are done. I just respectfully ask that you use your opportunity to ask questions only. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and call the June 18th, 2018 regular Destin City Council meeting to order. What we'll do is, Eric, would you like to come up and say the invocation?
It's on now. Thank you. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this great city that we get to live in. I also thank you for these men and women that you've called and appointed to lead this city. I think about Solomon and how when he took his place as king, he asked you for wisdom to govern his people, your people. Lord, I pray that we would seek your wisdom the same way Solomon did and seek wisdom to govern and lead this great city into the future. Lord, I know that it pleased you when Solomon asked for that, so I know it pleases you when we ask for that. So we ask for wisdom for all the men and women here in this room, that we invite your presence here today and invite your wisdom so that we may make the best decisions, they may make the best decisions regarding this city and its future. And we ask this in your name. Amen. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on tonight's meeting will be the approval of the minutes. Approval of minutes of May 17th, 2018, which... Oh, sorry about that. Thank you, brother. Agenda approval. Matters not specifically listed on the agenda may be added or acted upon by a supermajority of the council. Do any council members want to make any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, I'll entertain motion for agenda approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? I guess. There we go. My first day. Unanimous, so moved. All right, now, first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. It's approval of the minutes of the May 17, 2018 City Council Workshop.
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Second. We have a motion to approve. We have a second. Seeing no further comment? Unanimous, ayes have it, so moved. All right, proclamation, recognition, special presentations. The first item, 2A, is the Point Resort Marina, net positive public benefit. Mr. Trammell, did you guys decide if you want to go ahead and what you decided to do?
Joe Winkler, partner and owner's rep for the property. We understand that the city land use attorney has some documentation to review, and therefore we'd like to table this until the next meeting.
Let's ask her how much time do you think you would need, Ms. Kopp? 2 or 4 weeks to review?
2 weeks is enough, but when is the agenda deadline?
Wednesday before.
Wednesday before July 2nd, whatever it was.
Is that good for you, you think?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
July
Thank
2nd?
you. Yes, it'll be at the July 2nd meeting.
Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And just one other following item, I think there may have been some confusion or clarification needed. Specifically, what we're looking for is council's approval on the proposed public benefit for the associated marina. So the information that was submitted before was a letter summarizing those public benefits, some drawings, as well as a presentation and some other support documentation. So when we come back in 2 weeks, whatever the date may be, that's specifically what we're looking for, is approval for the 25-foot setback waiver and also the proposed public benefit items. So,
Thank you, Mr. Trim.
Thank you very much.
Next will be public comments. Mr. Bailey, do you have any cards? We have no blue cards of items on the agenda. Do we have any yellow cards? We have no yellow cards. Would anyone that just walked in late would like to come up and speak on any item not on the agenda, or on the agenda for that matter? Seeing none, we'll move right on through to our city manager's report.
I have nothing on the report this time, sir.
All right, Mr. Burns.
We're here on the first reading of ordinance number 18-06-LC, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida, relating to establishing the Technical Review Committee, TRC, to streamline the process of development review, providing for amendment to Article 2, Administration, revising the development review process, providing for amendments to Article 3, Definitions, Yard, providing for amendment to Article 5, General Provisions, providing modification to Article 6, Concurrency Management System, providing for amendment to Article 20, Building Regulations, providing for findings of fact, providing for incorporation into the Land Development Code, providing for conflicting provisions, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. And this is a public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Do we have anyone that would like to make public comment on ordinance 18-0C-LC?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to offer direct motion, if I could, please.
Go ahead.
I move that the City Council approve proposed ordinance 18-06-LC on first reading and direct staff to advertise for second reading.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Any discussion? Go ahead, Mr. Destin.
This was pulled last time for, I think it was continued to this meeting, because I had some concerns about the makeup of the language within the proposed LDC amendment. Most importantly, I think I didn't go into it at this time, so I guess it's worth it to go in now. I think the Technical Review Committee is a good idea. I do have some reservations with the current makeup of the review committee at the moment. I wouldn't rush into this without making sure that it is a body that reflects the interests of the council. I'd like to see the council have final approval over the makeup of the technical review committee. Furthermore, I think it would be perhaps a dereliction of duty, perhaps to have a private company like Destin Water Users sitting on the actual committee itself. I have concerns that Destin Water Users is wonderful. However, they're always going to vote yes just about for development because they got to have more meters. I think that's a conflict, and I don't think it's a good idea to have a private corporate party sitting on our technical review committee of development. Furthermore, we don't have our land use attorney sitting on the committee. I think if they're going to be making land use decisions without us, if it is a minor development, we at least need our land use attorney there reviewing and having a vote at the table. Those are the concerns I have at the moment. So I'm not going to be supporting this in its current iteration. So I'll leave it open for discussion, and if I feel like I'm getting traction, I might throw in a substitute motion to send it to for some revisions.
Thank you, Mr. Destin. Mr. Dixon, you're first.
I understand what you're saying, Mr. Destin. I will say that the water company, Destin Water Users, is the only game in town as far as there's no other water and sewer provider. I don't think that, I'm hoping that they're not getting into the what will be allowed to be built, but I'm hoping that they would be into the, what kind of water pressure can they provide? What kind of hydrant systems are they going to have? What kind of, lift stations and things like that. So I'm not,
I think probably what would be a compromise would be, rather than having as a voting member, would be an advisory member to the committee. That way that they're there to address all the issues that you rightfully think, and I agree with it, they should be there to discuss and advise. But from a voting standpoint, I don't think I can support that.
Many years ago, we had a technical review committee, and as far as I was of the understanding is this committee, the only thing they did was forward, they're kind of like our town center CRA and our harbor CRA advisory committee. They just basically forward the information on to us, whether they say it technically is approved or, as far as they can provide water and sewer to it. I don't really know, I don't really see it being
it's true that
political of a body.
Well, it's true that they do, but all the minor developments will not come to us. They'll make the final decision. So 25,000 square foot is where that threshold is set right now, and the question is, are we comfortable with 25,000? What does that look like? I've gotten some information from Ms. Bryla that said, no, that's kind of like a CVS and below, but kind of like a CVS. I don't know if I'm comfortable with delegating that authority, so I'll leave it to you.
The issue, what you're speaking of, Mr. Destin, can be addressed by us if you want to, reduce what we actually would look at as far as review process. So, and then, I still think that is an advisory capacity, this technical review committee. I really don't have a problem with it.
City Manager, would you like to weigh in on those comments?
Yes, sir. I would like to address Council Member Destin's concerns one at a time. As far as the outside agencies on the Technical Review Committee, they have no part in approving or disapproving the site plan as part of the review. What they do is that, as Council Member Dixon had mentioned, they look at the plan and they comment on whether or not they agree with the capacity that is being put on there. The same thing with any other outside agency such as Okaloosa Gas. If there's something technical that needs to be added to the site plan based upon their delivering the product, whether it's gas or water, whatever, they give their comments. This is all that the TRC does, is that they provide comments within their own industry based on their technical knowledge of the site plan before them. It's not to make any decisions. As far as the makeup of it with the land use attorney is always invited to attend, and if there are complex projects that have to do with land use, such as, PUDs and zoning issues, I personally would ask her to please sit in on the TRC for her comments, but I'm not aware of any municipality in the state of Florida that has a land use attorney on their technical review committee. And to the last comment regarding the 25,000-foot structure, we do have some pictures. Doug, if you could bring those up for me, of what a 25,000-foot structure looks like. We have a couple of different examples here. So all of these, I think we have 3 of them, all of these are 25-foot structures. So anything below that, the council would not see. It was an arbitrary number that we just used as an example. We could go down as far as 10,000 square feet. We don't recommend to staff going lower than that because a 10,000 square foot structure is a McDonald's or a Wendy's, and anything below that, council would be having to approve everything that was built in the city, and that will bring the site plan review process to a screeching halt. Again, council can recommend to staff a different number rather than the 25,000 square feet, and we would be happy to accommodate. But again, this is not for a TRC to approve or disapprove a site plan, but to make comments based on whether or not it meets code and whether or not it meets the requirement of the individual agencies, such as water users. I hope that explains.
Mayor, real quick, I think I'm glad the city manager clarified some of that, because I think some of the language, as it's currently drafted, doesn't make that clear. Because there is some language in there that makes it seem like they are approving of the overall design. It doesn't narrow it down, saying the Destin water users will be there to determine water pressure and water-related issues and provide their feedback. It kind of says each TRC member will have this authority to do that. So if that is the purpose of it, I would say it's great, but we do need to specify a little bit more detail. And I'm not sure if Kim ever had a chance to review it too closely, but my other suggestion would be I do think the land use attorney should have some role with this committee, because while not a voting member, they still need to consult with the land use attorney on any of these issues to sort of avoid what we had tonight. Something come up that gets punted down the line because she needed to look at it first. And I just think she's very competent in what she does, and she'd be an asset to that board. And that's my personal opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Next up for comment is Mr. Overdeer.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, the only thing I thought the purpose of this technical review committee was to get everybody at the table at one time so they could kind of speed the process up a little bit, rather than having to send it out to the fire department and to Destin water users and all these other people, to have them basically sign off on these documents and bring them back, and it slows down the process for whoever's coming before this committee. So I thought that it was to kind of speed the process up and streamline it a little bit. So I think having everybody at the table is probably a good idea. 25,000, if those are 25,000 square foot buildings and you could build something just a little bit smaller than that and we wouldn't get to look at it, I don't think that's right. That's 25,000 probably is too much. And I agree. I think we're still going to have final approval on it, so it's going to come back before us, even though the technical review committee is going to look at it and give it their blessing. I think it's still going to come back to us for final approval.
Thank you, Mr. Overdeer. I had somebody up, and I just believe it was you, Preble. Go ahead, Preble.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually think that those photos that were shown make Councilman Destin's point. I do appreciate that the Technical Review Committee's composition that I had discussed at the last meeting, those changes were incorporated, which I'm glad to see, but I too have an issue with the size that we are listing and would like to see it reduced to at least 10,000.
With those comments, what I think I'd like to do is go ahead and bring this particular motion to a vote, and then we can make another motion maybe to address a couple of these other issues and do that.
You'll need one of the council members to actually vote to call the question.
What?
I'll call the question.
All right, let's go ahead and vote on the original motion to approve the first reading and pass it on to the second one.
Mayor, I'm going to go ahead and offer a substitute motion. You want to clear it? I'm going to offer a substitute motion that we we continue this. Actually, we're going to table it. I'm going to make a motion to table with instructions that the land use attorney and Mr. Burns get together and take Ms. Bryla's LDC amendment and let's tweak it a bit. Let's move the square foot threshold to 10,000. I'd like to see the land use attorney as a member of the TRC, and
You just made a motion to table, though.
with the instructions to allow the land use attorney and our
Yeah, I think what we need to do is just get a motion to table, second it, and then you can make another motion with some instructions to council. I think that'd be more efficient, if that's okay with everyone.
He's making a substitute motion then, correct?
He changed that. He motioned to table. When you motion to table, it's a straight up and down. Once we get a second, it's a straight up and down vote.
Well, you have to vote actually on the call the question motion. So
that's
y'all-
true.
Yeah, you have to vote on calling the question, so y'all can deny that and then hear Mr. Destin's motion.
Okay. We'll vote on call to question.
I'm confused. Are we voting on whether we want to call the question, or are we voting on the original motion?
You're voting on the original motion because they're calling the question.
We got out of one. Okay, on this. And the motion fails.
Okay, so I'll just offer a regular motion then here.
Yes.
I'm going to move that we instruct our land use attorney, our city attorney to work with staff, Ms. Bryla and Ms. Lejeune, to amend the LDC ordinance, I believe 1806 LC, to reflect that the land use attorney will be a member of the TRC and that we're going to lower the square footage to threshold to 10,000 square foot.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. First one to speak, Mr. Marlar.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not really sure how to word this. I don't want to offend anybody, especially Ms. Kopp or the city attorney. But if you're going to put the attorney on the city attorney on this, is it part of her initial contract, or are we going to have to pay her more money? Because that's, the bottom line. I mean, nothing against Ms. Kopp, but if it's not part of her contract, then that's going to make us having to pay her by the hour for however long it takes.
It's part of her contract.
Ms. Kopp is paid hourly, so for the additional time that she spends on that TRC, she would be able to bill us for those additional hours. Yes, it does, but again,
I am paid hourly. No, I don't have a monthly retainer, so for every hour I work, that's what I get paid for.
Okay.
And Mayor, I just have one question. It's being tabled. Does that allow staff to bring it back as soon as it's ready?
No, Mr. Destin has made a separate motion. We had to vote on the call to question, so the tabling did not take place.
Okay.
So if it would clarify the record, it's a motion to continue to, how long do the attorneys think they might need to get with Ms. Bryla? And I can do it, what do you think, the second meeting in July?
Well, Ms. Bryla is out this week.
Okay.
So, and the agenda is due Wednesday, so that would
Okay.
give us 2 days, so it may,
So-
I don't know if 2 days is enough with her schedule.
If you tell me what meeting you'd like, I can do the first meeting in August. I just don't know how much time you guys might need.
We could do the 18th.
Easily.
Okay, so I'm going to continue this to the 18th and instruct staff that Ms. Kopp, Mr. Burns, Ms. Lejeune, and Ms. Bryla get together and incorporate the changes that reflect, including the land use attorney on the TRC and reducing the threshold of a major versus minor development to 10,000 square foot.
I guess we have a motion, we have a second, I see no further
Did you say
discussion.
July 18th or August 18th?
The only thing I'd like to bring up, Mr.
July 18th is a
Destin, would be that
July 16th.
It needs to be July 16th.
Let the record show July 16th.
the difference between, there's no doubt 20,000, 25,000, I mean, I heard everybody gasp when we saw the pictures. But, city manager, did you say 15,000 foot would be a building about the size of a fast food establishment?
No, sir, 10,000, and staff is fine with 10,000. We just didn't recommend anything less than that.
Sounds good to me. All right, we have a motion, we have a second. No further discussion. I'll hit the vote button. Unanimous, the ayes have it, so moved. All right. Under public hearings, it's the second reading of ordinance 18-10-CC, an ordinance of the City of Destin amending Article 6, registration of short-term rentals. Do you have anything to add to that, Jeff, before we open up for public hearing?
No, let's read the title.
Go ahead.
Ordinance number 18-10-CC, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida relating to short-term rental registrations, providing for authority, providing for findings of fact, providing for the amendment of the Code of Ordinances, Article 6, registration of short-term rentals, amending sections 13-105 through 13-110, providing for incorporation into the Code of Ordinances, providing for conflicting provisions, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. And this is second reading. It's a public hearing, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Lejeune.
Yes, sir, just for clarification, this was the first set of recommendations that came from the short-term rental task force that were unanimous by all members of the committee. So on second reading, this has not changed since it had been approved on first reading. The recommendations coming out of the workshop we recently have are still being reviewed and compiled by staff. So this is only the recommendations that were unanimous with the task force.
Thank you, City Manager. I've got Mr. Braden next. Rodney, I'm going to make one comment. We didn't address it during the first reading, but one of the things I got thinking about on the 30-mile distance for the person of accountability, the response person, what I would like to suggest is either a 1 or 2 hour response time, because trying to measure where somebody lives sometimes is a little more difficult to enforce. But if we get a phone call at 10:12 and they don't show, and they show up by 11:12, that's something that our code enforcement people can count on, that person responded in a timely manner. So I'm just going to throw that out there, food for thought, that maybe we ought to look at a response time versus a distance from the rental property. That's just an idea that I came up with, try to find a compromise. Up first is Mr. Braden.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to make the recommended motion to move that the City Council approve proposed ordinance 18-10-CC on second reading.
Second.
My idea is already in the document. We got a motion? We got a
Public
second?
comment too, Mayor, before you vote.
Oh, okay.
Public comment.
Oh. Anybody want to talk about? I would have figured that they'd have filled out a card, but thank you for the,
It's a public hearing, so they don't fill out a card for this.
I stand corrected. Thank you. Mr. Burns. That's why we hired you. Anyone would like to step up and make any comments about the second reading of this ordinance short-term rental? Please, anyone. This is your opportunity. Seeing none, we have a motion, we have a second, and we have Ms. Ramswell.
Thanks. I did have a question. I noticed, I actually got an email, and it made me look into this a little bit. There is a line that states that once registration is complete, the applicant will receive a city-issued annual sticker. Is that new language, or was that something actually decided upon? Okay. I just didn't recall it, and I wanted to ask, so thank you.
And I read some of those too, about the stickers. I would just like to ask the council, I thought that was like nitpicking by some of the people that were worried about that the sticker would expose them to crime or something like that, but they've already got to have a sign out front anyway, so, you know. Yeah, there you go. Put another sign that says mean dog. Mr. Morgan.
Is this 30-mile or 1 hour time requirement, is this common, do you know, in the ordinances we've reviewed?
I don't know that it's necessarily common to other communities, but the task force and Mr. Wampler is here if not Mr. Wampler, I'm sorry, Mr. Shelton and Mr. Tadlock are here if you want to question them, but the task force felt that it was prudent because if you're going to have a responsible party and we have an emergency situation at a short-term rental, we want to make sure that there's a response. If you have someone who's, say, the responsible party and they're in Pensacola, the situation could easily get out of hand and possibly dangerous if someone cannot come right away. For example, if there is a water leak or a gas leak or something of a life safety nature, we would want someone who is responsible to be there as soon as possible. At first it was just 30 miles, but then taking into consideration the traffic during the summer, the task force added the 1 hour restriction as well. And again, it's to make sure that the responsible party is within the vicinity that can come and take care of the situation as soon as possible, even if it means having to evict someone because their activities are causing a hazard to the overall community.
And Mr. Morgan, I believe in the Flagler County and the Anna Maria Island one, they had that requirement in their short-term rental ordinances in that material that we received prior to the first reading.
Yeah, we've been getting a good bit of emails about it today from folks that are outside of the 30-mile range, and I would assume they're probably Airbnb hosts.
Well, the issue, I think, for the short-term rental task force in our communities is people just want a level of accountability outside of calling the police or the code enforcement. I think other communities have done the same thing. Just because you need a person that can respond to any of the issues that Ms. Lejeune mentioned, it doesn't necessarily have to be a management company. That's some of the complaints that I had, is that you're forcing us to use a management company. Well, not really.
Yeah,
I mean, it could be a friend,
that's kind of
an acquaintance, or you could pay somebody a minimal, monthly fee to, hey, if you watch out for our property. So
there is a solution for the lady from Georgia with the Airbnb to get around this.
Sure, and yes, it is a burden, but I think that's the intent of the short-term rental task force is have that level of accountability.
And I agree with the accountability, but when you're shutting these folks out that aren't within that 30-mile radius and they've made a large investment to create the short-term rental, I just want to make sure that there is going to be a way, if they want to keep Airbnb or if they want to keep VRBO, that there is a way for them to contract with somebody to be the responsible party. So they do have a solution. Okay, I feel better. Thank you.
We have no further comment from anyone. We have a motion. We have a second. I'll hit the little vote button. We have motion second. It's unanimous. So moved.
And Mayor, before y'all vote on the consent agenda, there were two items emailed to y'all earlier, and Ray has provided the hard copies, an amended Resolution 18-20 and an amended contract extension agreement for the Crowder Gulf Joint Venture contract. And it was just adding a jury trial waiver and a public records provision to that agreement. And then Resolution 18-20 was regarding the Toro model turf mower. And it just added some language in there to allow Ms. Lejeune to actually negotiate some additional terms that won't affect the price of the mower at all, if y'all approve this tonight, because for them to move forward with the negotiations, I think they require a resolution to be put in place. So if y'all move to accept the consent agenda, just someone needs to put that in their motion, that it's with the caveat that it's the substituted Resolution 18-20 and the substituted contract extension agreement.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion at this time.
Mayor, I'll go ahead and motion that we adopt the consent agenda with reflecting that the amended contract extension with Crowder Gulf and the amended Resolution 18-20.
We have a motion,
I'll second that.
and we have a second. Any discussion? Tuffy Dixon.
Yeah, I just have a question. Is this Jerry Pate, the professional golfer? It is?
Tuffy would like to meet him, if we can add that to the motion, please.
He's not going to vote until he gets that meeting. All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Seeing no further discussion, I'll hit the vote button. Unanimous, so moved. Well, Tuffy, I'm not going to take a break. We normally break right now. Comments and presentations from Mayor, City Council, Land Use Attorney, City Attorney. Councilmember Braden.
Thank you, Mayor. Under my name was discussion of the ordinance regulating vehicles on the beach. There was, I guess, a pretty good public outcry of the vehicles on the beach about a week or so ago, maybe last week. So I just kind of want to get the council's opinion on it to see if it was possible to have our land use attorney go back and make some language to our ordinance, because it's kind of not real clear if it's in reference to public or to private property. I think it's as it sits now, it's maybe to more public property, and we've already had people saying that if it's private, that they're going to start driving their vehicles on their private property down to the beach, making it easier. I was just kind of wanting to get the consensus of the council to see if it's something that we could go back and do, if we could go ahead and let our land use attorney go ahead and add that language or change the language to this ordinance and bring it back to us next meeting.
Well, you know, folks might want to weigh in, but I mean, this is something that's important to you, so you can kind of direct them to do that and bring it forward, back before us as a council.
Well, I had recommended that the council discuss this because what we would recommend as staff is to extract the vehicles on the beach from the language that we currently have, because the way the ordinance is framed is that it talks about the public activity on the beach, which is kind of a gray area because some people are interpreting it that it's public activity on all beaches, and then others are interpreting it that it is, you know, public activity on the beach, which leans towards if it's public activity, then it's on a public beach. Now, tied in with the vehicle language is also dogs and glass. So we were concerned about the property rights issues of denying property owners the ability to let their dog on their private beach, or sitting on their beach under an umbrella with a glass. So we can do the whole thing and tighten the whole thing up, or we can extract vehicles, because there is justification for disallowing vehicles on the beach. There's environmental concerns such as coastal erosion and sea turtles and other habitat issues, and we could regulate it so that you could not have a vehicle south of the toe on the dune, whether it's public or private. I've discussed this in length with the land use attorney, and she agrees with me that we could do the language that way, but I asked Mr. Braden to take the temperature of the council on how they want us to proceed, whether it's the whole, tightening up the whole thing, or extracting the vehicles and dealing with that issue.
Thank you, ma'am.
In the words of Ms. Trammell at the last Wednesday's meeting, make a motion if you want to make sure it gets done. I mean, just my advice.
I'll put that in a motion.
Second.
Yeah, to tighten it up. Just like the city manager said, it's environmental. It's, you know, we also have the sea turtles, and there's a lot going on, whether it's private or public. So I'll put that in a motion.
All right, we have a motion.
Second.
And we have a second by Ms. Ramsel, and my little board is lit up. So, Mr. Morgan, you're first.
Thank you, Mayor. So, have you discussed what language would, since the sheriff looks like he'll be enforcing some of this, have you discussed some language with them?
Yes, and that's where we were having the problem, because our ordinance was gray and was open to different interpretations. The county ordinance does make a very strict division between public and private property. However, I do believe that if we had an ordinance that disallowed vehicles on public and private property, that the sheriff's office would be able to enforce that.
So as it stands now, any beachfront property owner can drive their car on the beach?
Yes,
If they can get to it.
if they can get to it.
Most can't.
Sure. I know what I'm doing this weekend.
All right, thank you, Mr. Morgan. Next up, Mr. Destin.
Thanks. Yeah, I had just a very small general question that might just be better suited for when we see what you propose. But the toe of the dune, is that the same as the erosion control line? Or, I'm at the risk of sounding ignorant, I don't know exactly where you legally delineate it. Of course, everybody thinks the dune line, but I'm not really sure the difference between the two.
I'm going to let the land use attorney address that.
It's not the same line, so the erosion control line would be much closer to the water than the toe of the dune, so.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, and okay, well, I'll save it. Thanks.
Mr. Dixon.
My question is East Pass considered beach? Because that's where the issue was, right?
Oh.
Yes.
Yes.
It is considered part of the beach?
Yes, and
Right.
in fact, there's a spoils easement out there, and you can maybe explore, put some language in there to protect any spoils easements if that's legal too.
So we can treat it the same as we do the beachfront, the pass property.
Yeah, they, on their map, when they come up with the erosion control line, I think they have one for the East Pass beaches, because they've nourished those before.
All right, better check into that, make sure it's still the legal description and definition and everything else, but we better check that because, you know, I don't know.
Ms. Ramswell.
Thank you. I was just curious because I think it's in our LDC. I believe that's where this came from, under beach management. And it actually states up at the top, the purpose of this section is to promote the health, safety, and welfare of the public at large, including residents and visitors. And then underneath that, it has a whole section on wheeled vehicles. The use of wheeled vehicles other than emergency and public safety vehicles, turtle nesting, baby strollers is prohibited except by special permit. So
Right.
when I read that, I interpret it as whether you're a resident or, and I do see how it can be slightly misconstrued, but not on that section.
I think the confusion right there, though, is they're addressing the public beaches specifically. When, like, I can see where the confusion is because it says residents. That doesn't mean, it doesn't say property owner. That's what's missing.
Right, which to me would take it to mean all beaches, but I do see from a legal standpoint perhaps the need to spell it out, so to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Ramswell. Mr. Dixon?
Yes, I'm sorry, I meant to say this before. Make sure whatever we do, we don't eliminate emergency vehicles on the beach, so, yeah.
All right, well, we had a motion, and we had a second, and we had discussion,
You have to allow public comment.
and we'll let some people have public comment.
Good evening. David Schusler, 100 Gulf Shore Drive, Destin. You know, I've been coming to these meetings for about 6 years, and I don't think there's been one that I've been to that did mention code enforcement, or we need more, we need, you know, we're not, you know, and at one time it was, but we're correcting it, it's getting better. We charge, or excuse me, the city charges, if I'm not mistaken, $200 for a application fee to rent their house that is 1 year and one, you know, and then it renews. You've got to get another one, correct? Okay, if somebody got a calculator, because I didn't major in math, okay, how many short-term rentals do we have? I mean, just a ballpark.
1,600?
1,600, okay.
What do we have registered? That's the real number. I just can see where
As
we're
of
on.
today, we have 777 registered short-term rentals. I'm not sure where the 1,600 came from, but it's 777.
Yeah, David, I don't do good quizzes.
Okay, I don't either. I heard that there was over 1,000, and then there's got to be a lot more than we're, you know, that we don't even have registered. But I did a quick little search, and I didn't go to every county in Florida, but in Key West, and I know Key West is not Destin, but we're like a redheaded stepchild, you know, they charge $500 for their permit for the year. And I know that Key West has got some big bucks and they've got some small bucks people. But what if Destin were to go to $400 per rental, per annual rental contracts, the right to rent, and earmark that money, the extra $200 that we're giving, to nothing but code enforcement. Nothing but. There's the answer to your code enforcement problems right there, in my opinion. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, David. Does anyone else want to weigh in on the beach erosion or the beach access issue? We got plenty of time tonight, so we will let you pass.
So is this on? Okay, Shar Rohr, 4564 Woodman Drive. I just want to say, we just had an Airbnb in our neighborhood that hasn't paid at all or signed up at all, no matter how many notices they get on their door. And I guess they're supposed to go in front of a magistrate next, however long that takes. But in the meantime, they rent it out, and they occupy our pool, and they park boats where they're not supposed to, and, you know, it's up to the people living in the neighborhood to try and do something about it. And then and I don't know what they charge, but I think it's quite a lot. And then we have another Airbnb that just opened, and I can tell you, and it's just a small little house with no garage, that they charge $319 a night. And it's occupied, we're like 2 blocks from the beach in Sovereign Island. It's occupied constantly. And so I think, I'm just following up on him, I think they could pay more to help us with code enforcement out of all the money they're making. So this is my input to it. And on top of it, the people that are managing the property, they're long-term renters that are also paying the owners. I don't even know if that's possible. He's got a long-term renter, and then he's got short-term renter with the idea that long-term renter vacates the house every time the short-term renter comes. So just would like some input legally on that situation. So he doesn't have to go far for his manager because they're living in the house in the in-between times. Right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, nobody's standing up over there from that part of the peanut gallery, so I'm going to call for a vote. Everybody, and let me, Ray, if you want to clear that, or Doug, want to.
I'll stand up to do that.
Thank you, Ken. Hitting the vote button. We have. The vote is unanimous, so moved. All right.
Thank you, Mayor. We got two more for tonight. Whatever, speaking of the earmarking the dollars for more code enforcement, whatever happened to our harbor personnel we were supposed to get last year from the delivery vessel? Was that not supposed to happen? Delivery vessel stickers that we come up with?
We have code enforcement assigned to the harbor, sir.
We don't have anybody, we don't have somebody on the harbor, it's just they're assigned to the harbor?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Next, I would like to, I guess, I don't know if I need to make it a motion, I guess I do, to direct city manager to provide our city attorney with the necessary documents he will need to send a letter to the state, I guess advising them of the minor changes to our heritage park that we may be doing in the future.
Is that to notify the Restore Act folks, the authority that y'all voted last week to make some changes to the park, and that you'd like them notified that those changes are being made?
Yes, sir, exactly.
So those changes, we would be notifying the FCT, the Florida Community Trust, and we will be notifying the county, because we are a sub-recipient to the county. They're the actual recipient of the grant. And we were waiting until we bring forward the cost estimate, because the council made a recommendation and voted on making the recommendation, but part of that was to get the cost estimate first. So I was not putting the horse before the cart. When we bring the cost estimate to council, then they'll have the ability to vote yes or no, to then direct the engineering firm to make those changes.
And I have a question about that. We pretty much left that special meeting with the fact that the CRA advisory panel wanted to get their hands on the plans and make their inputs, and then the CRA council wanted to do that too. So we can't get a cost estimate until we see what happens after they mold their version of the plan, correct?
Well, we were basing the cost estimate on the recommendation, which talked about the stairs and the switchbacks.
I still think it would be viable for Jeff to send them a letter, let them know what our intent is, because if they come back and red flag it or say, no, we've already approved this or whatever, and we can't, then we just wasting their time, and we're spending money on the engineer coming back with costs and all that.
Sure, we're happy to do that, sir, but okay. I can do that. We don't need to have the attorneys write the letter. I can inform both the FCT and the county of the intent of the council, and I had planned to do that. I can just do it sooner rather than later.
And could you just do a draft and send it out to everyone so they can look at the draft before we send it out?
I'll do the same thing that I did for the DBPR letter.
I appreciate that, but I would feel better if our attorney handled that.
How about we both do it? You send the letter and I'll just
review it.
And,
sure.
And then I'll be copied on it, and I'll follow up with anyone if they have questions, like a legal question. Is that good? Okay.
Fair enough. I'm good with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Braden. Thank you, Jeff and Chris. All right, Ms. Ramswell.
Thanks. That actually, was that a motion that we needed to vote on? No?
It's actually made a motion, but would that also include, that's not just a letter, that's like communicate to them, right, in general? Is
That was my intent,
Yeah.
yes, sir.
That wasn't a motion, though. He was just kind of giving y'all. Yeah, we don't need a motion for that, I don't believe.
I don't know, ask the attorney.
You made a motion.
I did call it a motion.
I need to pay better attention. I'm sorry, Mr. Braden. So, Mr. Braden made a motion. Do I have a second? We have a second. Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion. Unanimous, ayes have it, so moved. Okay, Ms. Ramswell, let's take a stab at it again.
Okay, great. That actually reminded me, some things came up at the last meeting, the Heritage Park meeting, and I wanted to see if we could have staff or the attorney look into the entire situation, and just sort of, it came up a couple times about concerns about a private party benefit from the park. And Mr. Burns, I don't know if that's appropriate for you or if it's staff, but just to ensure and render some sort of opinion that there is no some private party benefiting from our plans with the park. Does that make sense?
There is a provision in the state constitution that the city government cannot use its credit to benefit a private party, and that's been discussed in the past in some of the minutes in this. If you want me to just do like an audit essentially and determine if there's any private parties that y'all are concerned about, is that what you're asking about?
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
Okay, I'll do that. Can I get any records I need from you if I need to get minutes or whatnot?
We'll have to talk. I have
Okay.
no idea.
So I received an email from someone this week, and they were concerned about the fact that they had gone to Joe's Bayou and been charged and paid to use my brain is not working. Thank you, to use the ramp at Joe's Bayou. And then they went around and there was nowhere to park. And apparently other folks had been in the same position, and they'd been making their own parking spaces out along the road and in the right-of-way and been ticketed. And so the concern was raised that if there's nowhere for them to park and people are having to leave or park illegally and then they're getting ticketed, why are we actually accepting their money when, you know, can you kind of look into that or address that? And
Yes, ma'am, and if you have any correspondence, I'd appreciate you forwarding that to me so we can do a good job of researching that for you.
Okay, that'd be great.
I just so happened went on a bike ride Saturday, right by there, Preble, and that there were some trucks parked in the grass where it says no parking. There's signs, and then there's another little area just past the boat ramp of the new property that we bought, but we haven't developed it. And there's regular signs, like you buy at Ace Hardware, it says no parking, and there's 2 or 3 cars parked there. But further, you go down the road another 100 yards, and there was plenty of parking for trucks and trailers. They just didn't want to walk that far, is what it looked like. I had no idea you were going to talk about this. I just, when I was riding by, there was a sheriff's deputy there, I think, handing out tickets at the time. And I went riding by, I'm like, well, if there was 4 or 5 more places for a boat and a trailer, not even have to pull in or nothing. They could have just parallel parked in legal parking areas, all the way down to the little walk trail even had some open parking, so.
Yeah, well, you can imagine the response when we're charging money for people to be able to use the ramp, and then they're getting ticketed when we've got people parking in right-of-ways and they're begging for the people in front of them to be ticketed. So it just seemed like a really weird juxtaposition and certainly concerning.
Yeah, they just didn't tell you the whole story is what it all boiled down to, because there was parking.
So since the mayor identified that there was available parking, do you still need us to look into that, ma'am?
Well, how close to capacity is that parking lot? I mean, is there a situation, I mean, are we there where there is not enough parking, and is that something we need to consider? Do we still take people's money if they can't park there legally? I mean, it sounds like we're getting close to capacity over there.
But the problem is, whether you take money or not, if they still launch their boat, they still got to park somewhere.
Right, so do
you
we
could
need to
close,
address parking?
you could close the boat ramp, but that's not going to make them happy because then they can't launch their boat. So it's kind of a catch-22 type situation. But there was on Saturday, I don't know about any other day, there was more parking for at least 4 to 5 more trucks in park at that particular time. It was just they were going to have to walk. It wasn't convenient because it was outside the lot. So, you know, how do you make somebody happy there that illegally parked and knew they were illegally parking?
Well, I guess, you know, we have all this talk about being forward-thinking and how many people are we going to have here in the years to come. And if we're already close enough that we've got only 4 spaces left, do we need to look at adding gravel or something? I mean, the concrete plant utilizing parking?
We have applied for a grant, a $5 million NERDA grant. We're supposed to hear something in August, and part of that is to expand Joe's Bayou, which will create additional parking.
Why can't we open that up and let people park in there now?
It's not secure, sir.
Secure. What does that mean?
I think there's garbage and spoils and rocks and
coyotes.
Are we talking about the old cement plant?
No, there's no reason why people couldn't park there.
We spent like $50,000 a year ago to have that cleaned off, and it was supposed to have been cleaned, and it's far from it. And that was one of the other things I was going to bring up tonight, but why has that individual been paid off when that park is nowhere near cleaned off and there's still piles of rock left on it?
I looked at it and it looked like to me from the roadway that you could park 25 trucks and trailers in there.
Okay, so that's obviously something we're going to have to look into. I have one person telling me it's clean, I have the other person telling me it's not. So let us go ahead and look into that, and I can bring that back to council.
That'd be great. Thank you.
I'm not saying it's perfectly clean now, but I am saying that you can park some stuff on.
Is that your disclaimer, Tuffy? Okay, because me and Rodney know it ain't. Mr. Morgan.
I have another item.
Yeah, this is pertaining to yours.
Gotcha.
And we don't have to have this discussion tonight, but it is a quick meeting, so I will chime in. I don't want to see any more slips added to that boat ramp so it can sit empty 330 days out of the year. I just don't think it's the best use of that property, the cement property. Yeah, parking slips, parking spots for the boats. I just don't want to see the cement plant used for that.
Thank you, Chatham. Ms. Ramswell, who's not done yet. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And then my final concern tonight is actually, and I know Friday was an anomaly because we were in a session all day long, but getting all of the information for the agenda on Friday and then not getting out of that meeting till after 5 only allowed for today for us to try to get all of our thoughts, reach out to folks that we wanted to reach out since today was the only business day. I had to find out about one item by getting a phone call from somebody that was presenting. So I really want us to see if we can try to get this agenda out sooner. We're having a lot of really heavy issues coming before us, and it's so hard to do the necessary legwork and research when it's given to us the Friday before. So I would really appreciate if there's some way to look into
And
Wednesday.
You're right. It was an anomaly, absolutely an anomaly that we had 2 night meetings, and then preparing for the visioning on Friday, and then being in visioning all day on Friday. We were able to publish Friday morning. Thursday we were preparing for the visioning, and I apologize for the lateness this time. By ordinance, it says that you receive it on Thursday. If you ever want to back that up, you know, so that you get it earlier, we could then back up the entire process because we start preparing a week and a half in advance to get it to you. We can bring back the ordinance and the council can dictate whatever day you want to receive the agenda item.
I am very strongly in favor of that, and it seems like years ago there was some ordinance that said we were supposed to get it a week ahead of time, and we've had discussions about that maybe before you were here.
The one in place says Thursday before the meeting.
And I think maybe once we've gotten it on Thursday, and I'm
No,
not
that's
just
not
limiting
correct.
it to you.
You've been getting it on Thursday for quite a while. You don't always get all the items.
Okay.
Sometimes there are extenuating circumstances for gathering and acquiring information, and one or two may be held back at the last minute, but we have been publishing on Thursday everything that we had at that time.
So if we could back it up, and I'm not sure how the rest of the council feels, but it'd be terrific if we could get it on Wednesday even. I mean, something so that all that information is out there. Even the public gets to review it because they have questions. They weigh in, ask questions of us, and then I want to find out and ask questions so I can get back to them and do my own homework. So really, a day or two isn't enough time, and I would love to see it. Wednesday.
Okay, so we'll be happy to bring back a revised ordinance. I would like a motion and a vote as to when you would like to receive your agenda.
Jeff, you
Real quick, you were kind of correct earlier about the 1 week. All the boards, it's in the ordinance, are supposed to provide their materials to the boards 1 week in advance, and so
But that's not the council.
that's not the council. Yeah, it does not include, it's everything but the council, yeah.
The boards aren't getting it a week in advance either. I've gotten from a couple different committees that they're getting it an hour before the meeting.
I haven't heard these complaints, ma'am. Please send those to me when you get them so I can deal with them immediately.
Oh, I thought I told you about one last week, and I've gotten another one, so I'll be happy to. Bottom line is, I think everybody really needs to get these just as far in advance as possible. Wednesday for us.
Wednesday would be great.
Yeah.
Well, to do that, basically, we need to change the ordinance.
Right, and I will make that motion that the council receive their agenda no later than the Wednesday before the following Monday meeting.
You want to add to that, have staff bring an ordinance to that effect?
Isn't that what I just said in the motion? Do I need to rephrase it?
Mayor, I believe it's actually a resolution that specify that, yes. So it'll be a lot easier than an ordinance.
Do we need to set aside the order of the day, or is this just a majority?
Are you asking for this motion that you're doing right now, do you need to set aside the order of the day? Technically, yes, you do need to, to add it on. So.
Let's be super complicated. Okay, so do I now need to make a motion, or does someone else need to make a motion to set aside the order of the day? Okay, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion then to set aside the order of the day.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Seeing no discussion, let's vote on this. Unanimous, so now you can make a motion.
And then I'll make the motion to have a resolution created that will specify that the council is to receive the agenda for a Monday meeting no later than the Wednesday prior.
Mr. Braden.
That'd be the full agenda or what we're getting now? Pieces of it?
We do our absolute very best to get you the full agenda, but there are sometimes extenuating circumstances that we cannot get all of the information. A lot of times I push it to the next meeting if it's not ready, but sometimes there are items that this council had made very clear that they wanted to see it. So we try to get it as soon as we can.
Yes, ma'am, I understand that. But I was just making sure what the motion was. If Ms. Ramswell was wanting to get the same thing we're getting now Thursday, just get it on Wednesday, but it's not going to be the complete agenda.
And again, we do the best that we can to get everything together in a timely manner. But when there are extenuating circumstances and I cannot get all the information that you need for the agenda item, I usually push it to the next meeting. But in circumstances where I know the council has said they wanted to see it at the next meeting, we do our best to get it to you as soon as possible.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, and I think normally Ray lets us know when we get our agenda package that it is not complete, that such and such will be added as soon as possible. So we can still go ahead and review and look forward to that last little nugget, whatever that may be. So I think that still gets what Ms. Ramswell wants accomplished, though, is that we'll get an extra day to begin the process. Some of our briefing materials are 350 pages long, so I appreciate that, the opportunity for an extra day. I think it's a good idea. Mr. Marler.
Where does that push the cutoff date for the clerk's office, though?
That's an internal process, sir. You don't have to worry about that. We'll take care of it. We'll make it happen.
I understand that, but what I'm getting at is that if we're going to move the cutoff dates and stuff like that, then we're going to be short on certain parts of the agenda. To me, because we need to give the public as much opportunity to, if somebody wants to present something, and then you say, nope, now you got to wait 2 more weeks for the next meeting.
It's always the next meeting.
Yeah, so it's, when that happens on a Thursday, I mean, it's happening now. It's
Does
just
the public
gonna be
have
one more
it
day
turned in a
early.
week prior to the meeting?
Mr. Braden?
Currently, if someone requests to fill out a speaker form to be on the agenda, deadline is noon on a Wednesday. So we can move that back a day maybe to still accommodate them. Instead of Wednesday at noon, it'll be Tuesday at noon.
No further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I don't know if we got it. Did you really second that, Rodney? Okay, I'm sorry.
The motion is passed unanimously. So moved.
Thanks, and that's all I have tonight, y'all.
Thank you, Ms. Ramswell. Next is Mr. Dixon.
Nothing tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Next is Mr. Overdeer.
Nothing tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Overdeer. Councilmember Marler.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to nominate Mrs. Barbara Mazzell for membership to the Harbor CRA Advisory Committee.
We have a nomination. We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to hit the vote button. Ayes have it. So moved.
2 quick things. If I can get city manager to get something back to me. I had talked to David Campbell about a week ago about the boat parking on the harbor side of Noriega Point, where we need to put the signs. I saw some out there at the closest they could get to the rocks, so I asked David about it, and he said I needed to get it on the agenda for the next, try to get it on the agenda for the next meeting so we can decide where the parking issue needs to be. I know Lance is here, so he might be able to help me out too on that.
I would prefer to bring it back to you, sir, at the next meeting.
Okay, and the other situation that I'd like to have checked back is, I've talked to Commissioner Wines. The Henderson Beach to Commons Drive behind Walmart, that intersection where the apartments come out, supposedly the apartment complex is supposed to put a red light or something in, and that never happened. And I talked to Mr. Wines. He said something had to come from the city requesting that we look into it. And I mean, I'm looking into stoplights, four-way stop or something, because there's been about a dozen near accidents alone, 3 right in front of me within 2 minutes of each other last week. And that's just something we need to figure out.
Yes, sir. I know that Mr. David Campbell has recently been in discussion with Mr. Jason Autry, who is the Public Works Director for the county. Let me get a follow-up on that, and I will let you know.
All right, that's all. Thank you. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Marler. Mr. Destin.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Destin. Mr. Morgan.
Thank you. Mr. Bailey, I think Seth Galloway sent an application for Board of Adjustment. Would you check on that and get it on my name for the next meeting? And that's it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Ms. Burns.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Kim, would you like to say?
No, I'm good, thank you.
City manager?
No, sir. No, sir, thank you.
All right. I declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for attending. We'll see you 2 weeks from now.